So I've already done the 4th gen Camaro review, but today I'm going to be doing the 3rd gen. And in the spirit of the 80s GM ownership, I got my mullet, I got my Levi's silver tab jeans with the custom crotch ventilation, got my high top shoes, got my beer, got my IROC, and most importantly, I got my 80s rock and roll. Let's do it. So the Mustang and Camaro rivalry has been around since the late 60s and continues on to this very day. After 1973, the rivalry just became sad. Emission standards and gas prices forced the once mighty pavement pounders to become 150 horsepower gutless turds. It's like watching two old boxers fight. Entertaining for a little while, but in the end it's just sad. Then came the 80s. Gasoline was plentiful and new technology allowed for better emissions control, and thus the horsepower wars were returning. If you can call mid-200 horsepower cars a war. GM guys will disagree, but Ford owned this era. The Mustang was super lightweight and packed 225 horsepower with a 5.0 liter. It rocketed through the quarter mile in 15 seconds flat. Wait, what? I thought this was the horsepower wars. A fucking Honda Civic can run that now. The 3rd gen came with about 20 different engine choices, ranging from the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder all the way up to the 5.7 liter. For time purposes, I'm going to stick with the fuel-injected V8 cars. They were 170 horsepower 5.0 liter with the throttle body injection. Then came the TPI motors, it's tune port injection. The 5.0 liter came up to 230 horsepower, and the 5.7 liter went all the way up to 245 horsepower. The throttle body injection 5.0 liter came in the RS. It's fairly reliable, but it's a slug. My zero-turn lawnmower could beat this thing in the quarter mile. GM struck first in the fuel injection wars, debuting the 5.0 liter tune port in the new IROC-Z. That name just sounds badass. The International Race of Champions, bitches. Unfortunately, this version of the 5.0 was a little too good for the Corvette's taste. So they dropped in a shitty camshaft for 1986, dropping the power output to 190 horsepower. Even more unfortunately, the Mustang went fuelie with its 5.0 and cranked out 200 horsepower and 285 pound-feet of torque, thus bringing the wood to the mullet-mobile. In 1987, GM stopped fucking around. The 5.0 tune port with a 5-speed was rated at the original 215 horsepower, and they also ripped out the L98 5.7 liter from the Corvette. They slapped some junk iron heads on it and rated it at 225 horsepower and a stump-pulling 330 pound-feet of torque. But once again, the Blue Oval beat them to the punch and upgraded the 5.0 to 225 horsepower. In 1989, after many lost stoplight wars, GM reached for the roids and started juicing. The 5.0 with the 5-speed was cranking out 230 horsepower, and the L98 cars put out 240 horsepower and 345 pound-feet of torque. Damn! They were finally able to make it a driver's race with the Stang, but it was really a case of too little too late. The tune port motors are the most temperamental little bitches that I've ever seen. They got stuck between the carb and fuel injection era. Cold start issues, rough idle issues, and pinging are all common. Not to mention the fact that the timing and TPS voltages like to wander. You're constantly having to adjust those to keep it running right. The wiring, the goddamn motherfucking wiring. Don't even get me started on the wiring. It's horrible. It was substandard from the factory, it cracks, it crumbles, and it shorts out. Thanks to these cars attracting a special kind of dumbass, the wiring is always going to be hacked up and fixed. If you're looking at one of these cars, be fully prepared to go through the engine bay and undo all of the dumb fuckery. Transmission-wise, you either had the T5 5-speed or the 700 R4 transmission. The T5 was just barely strong enough to contain the 305 and couldn't take the torque that the 350 cranked out. They could have put in either the Doug Nash 4+3 or the ZF6 behind the L98. But once again, Chevy didn't want to take away the sales from the plastic fantastic pile of rat shit. The 700R4 did its job well enough for a slush box. It did cripple the performance though. The majority of L98 IROCs had 277 rear end gears. Combine that with the odd gearing in the 700R4, it made for an interesting ride. It comes out of the hole like a bat out of hell and then absolutely falls flat on its face when the trans goes to second gear. On to the exterior. This is one of the high points of the car. Just look at it. It looks pissed off. With its Jack Sparrow eyeliner and its low slung stance, it looks like it's just waiting for a meal that it can scoop up. Let's open the hood. I said open. Open, you son of a bitch! Once you get the hood open, watch it closely or you might be its next meal. Always check the doors. They're big, hulking, and the pins are always shot. And the trunk? What? No way. They put a sucker downer on a fucking Camaro? I always thought these were reserved for the old bastard mobiles. But no, they put it on a Camaro. Now let's look at the interior. Holy shitballs, is it bad. Again, it was stuck in a limbo between the old and the new. I mean, what can you say? It's as boring as watching paint dry. The gauges rarely work, the dash falls to pieces, and the rear seats might as well not even be there. The vents. See the cardboard? Yeah, it's because they have ADD and are easily distracted. Drive down the road and they just point wherever the fuck they damn well please. The odometer? It's 5 digits. For the love of God, why? Guess they didn't think these shitboxes were going to make it more than 100,000 miles. Oh, and on the interior, get real used to squeaks and rattles. You can't fix them all. It's impossible. I've tried. So in the end, what can we say? GM hung tough, but it just couldn't best its biggest rival in the 80s. This was mostly due to odd choices like not putting a stick shift behind the flagship motor and using an incredibly long rear end gear ratio. Unless you don't think this was a ploy by GM, a plan to lull Ford into a false sense of security and then unleash domination on them in the 90s. That's crazy talk, right? Maybe not. In case y'all are wondering, yes, I actually cut my hair in a mullet and I did it just for you. So be sure and subscribe and see what other kind of crazy shit I can get myself into. Thanks for watching.